Welcome to the Women Influencers in Business and CRE podcast. I am Veronica Malolos, CCIM, founder and CEO of Capital Stack Real Estate Group, a commercial real estate company serving the greater Orlando area. Today's guest is Rosie Tchekmeian. From sports management to operations and management of sports arenas and stadiums, to director of franchise partnerships for Foxtail Coffee, Rosie's fabulous story is one you do not want to miss. Please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe below. I welcome your comments and please share with someone who can benefit from this podcast.
Hi, Rosie. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I am good. Boy, it is good weather today in Orlando, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, it's like fall is here.
I know, finally. And it's so funny because I saw something on Instagram that said there are only two seasons in Florida, right? It's summer or autumn.
Yeah.
Because it's still hot.
That's not right.
It's pretty cool.
So when we get 60 degrees here, we all take out like leather jackets and boots and
Oh yeah, the parkas come out.
Yeah. Pretend that it's nice and cold.
Yeah, it's really been awesome that you've agreed to come on this podcast. I am so
Thank
grateful. I know you're a very, very busy woman, so thank you so much. Well, I wanted to just go ahead and get started and give you an opportunity to share with our listeners the story of how you grew up in your environment and how you got to where you are today.
Wow. Okay. Let's get started then. So I grew up in Miami, Florida. I played volleyball, got a full scholarship playing volleyball to college. And so started my undergraduate career in sports administration. And as I kind of moved through college, I ended up getting an internship with the Don Shula Foundation. That was a golf, tennis, and fishing tournament in Miami. And so as an intern, you kind of learn all aspects. You're just, asked to help out everywhere and anywhere. And I found myself very interested in the operations and organization of all of it. So fast forward, ended up getting a full-time job there. And then eventually they actually did away with the foundation, but one of the main sponsors was an arena football team in Miami. And they asked me to come on board with them to be their director of operations for their arena football team. And, of course, I shared with them, I have no idea how to play football. I don't know any of the rules. And, you're going to ask me to do something like this. And they said, yep, you've got the abilities. We will train you on football and how to do it. And so it was a very fun, unique experience because you're in an arena, literally calling the commercial breaks and all the different promotions and things that are going on. And it's a very active and energetic kind of event. So I very much enjoyed that. And as I started doing that, I was meeting all the different people that were working in the arena. So got into arena management. They offered me a job at Miami Arena. That was before the two arenas that are in Broward and Miami now. Offered me a job there to basically be their director of operations. So ended up taking that job, loved it, and eventually ended up working for the corporate organization, which managed that particular arena. So Leisure Management International had about, I want to say it's 28 or 30 stadiums, arenas, performing arts theaters across the southern part of the United States.
Wow.
And so my job as the corporate director of operations was basically to really help any of the operations directors from those facilities when they had large events going on, or maybe a complicated situation where something was under construction, but they had a huge event, so they had to work around the construction, things like that. So kind of almost project management, but, special event type. So I did that for several years. One of the, I think, coolest things about that particular job was in Houston. I helped build Reliant Park at the time, which right now I think it's called, I want to say it's NRG Field, but it's where the Texans play. So it was the first retractable roof stadium at the time.
Oh, wow. Cool.
And I was kind of nuts and bolts into literally helping pick out furniture to designing where columns should or shouldn't go so that trucks can get in and out of the underground areas to these stadiums and stuff. So it was a pretty awesome experience. And then fast forward to where I am at Foxtail, it just makes everything so simple because, I can envision space, and what it's going to look like pretty easily as a result of all of these events I've done where you're literally just looking at a floor plan on paper and then you see it come to life, and then you break it down the next night or that night, and everything that you did just went away, in half an hour kind of thing.
But let me ask you a couple questions. So
Sure.
Firstly, my understanding is you actually have a master's in
Leisure management.
leisure management. Wow, very specialized field. That's really cool. And the second question would be your role in Foxtail. You've alluded to transitioning from what you did before to Foxtail. Tell us a little bit about what you do for Foxtail.
So Foxtail, I'm the director of franchise partnerships. So what that is basically, I guess the caveat would be my brother-in-law owns Foxtail. He was the founder and owner of Foxtail. Created it from scratch. The idea was it was just going to be a couple stores, not necessarily something that franchised. Right. He kept getting approached as the brand developed here in Orlando. And so he asked me, I was running a social media company for him. He asked me if I would shift gears and come over and start working on this program with him. Very quickly, he and I work fabulous together. We're deal makers. We're really good at selecting partners, selecting deal structures, and just, implementing them. And so I think, the combination of he and I in that focus really gave us a good, opportunity to propel Foxtail. And so in 2.5 years, we now have 58 locations that are open, and we've got about another 100, and I think it's 77 or 80 that are actually sold that will be in 6 states over the next couple years.
Wow,
so
fantastic.
Yeah, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's been learning new industry. For me, I'm taking obviously a lot of my experiences from the past and implementing them into this new part of my career. But I love that because I'm always willing to develop the next skill set and understand the next industry better. And, honestly, you kind of get to nitpick and pull apart some of the downfalls of, certain industries and go, oh, I can make that better. If we just do it this way, this will be easier. And I think we've done a lot of things that are not necessarily the norm and the cookie cutter as a result of having not been in the industry and been trained that this is the way you have to do it, type of thing. So I've sort of put my own spin on a lot of the way that we're propelling Foxtail.
Yeah, I love it. I was just at Foxtail last Friday, actually, on Lee Road. And that's a fantastic experience because I think that particular location is partnered with, and I forget the name of the donut shop.
Oh, Shaka Donuts, right?
Yeah, that was really awesome. I wanted to take a couple of minutes, if you don't mind, to just ask you about your childhood, how you were raised, and what really inspired you to get it. And I know the story about you working for the sports company in Miami, which then eventually led you to the venue business. Sure. But what is it about growing up that stands out that you'd want to share with us today?
I was raised, my father's Cuban, my mother's French. I was raised, I would say, in a pretty conservative household. So for a young girl growing up, I was born in 1971. So, growing up in the 70s and 80s and stuff, going through high school and all that, it was still a pretty sheltered, world. And so I loved sports. And I always, kept asking my mom, even though I was in Catholic school, I want to play on the basketball team. And she kept saying, well, there's not a girls basketball team right now. And I'm like, well, let me play on the boys basketball team. Then I'll just shoot the points, And
that's so awesome.
She convinced the priest to allow it, and they did. And honestly, I ended up going through college on full scholarships for volleyball and had the opportunity for basketball. And I think it was just sort of determination of wanting the next thing, even though someone says you can't do that. It's just like, well, why not? Let me go do that and let me show you I can do it. And I think I've always had that type of attitude.
Oh, that's fantastic. Is your mom kind of like that, or was that something you'd read from your dad?
I would say that my mom is probably very much like that. She's kind of a can-do attitude. And I remember her as a kid, just, she could go to Publix and get our groceries, take me to a bunch of games and, be there for that and make sure that she always was around. And then, it was go home and iron Catholic school uniforms and, help me. And she was just everywhere doing everything. And now, fast forward, I could sit here as a mother going, oh my God, I have no idea how she did all the things she did. But so she was just very determined.
Oh, that's amazing. Did you grow up with siblings or do you have any?
Yeah, I have an older sister. She works in the healthcare industry down in Fort Myers. And then I have a niece as well. And now I have two young kids, a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, two
What,
boys.
now my turn to ask you, how do you do it? I know you travel
I have no idea. My wife is amazing. She takes care of almost everything of with our kids and stuff.
Oh,
So I get
good.
to actually be like I'm fun mama, so I get to
Oh,
show up
good.
to all the games and show up to all the things and have a great time with it. So it's made my professional life, given me the ability to kind of keep excelling in this.
Yes, and that's really something that I think is a thread that runs with different stories that I've encountered, right? When somebody, a woman like you and me, has a partner who, like in my case, my husband has been very, very supportive, and he takes on a lot of the household, uh, you know,
Right.
responsibilities to allow me to shine
Right.
in what I do. So that's really fantastic. Let me
Yeah.
ask you a question. Moving on to challenges. If there was one challenge that comes to mind that you overcame, what would that be?
I mean, it would be as simple as just being a woman at the time when I was a young woman, I was in my late 20s to 30s when I was really running all of the arenas and stadiums and stuff. And I came across the entire industry was men.
Yeah.
And, they would see me initially as, how did this young, cute girl get a job, like doing this, like, what is this all about? And you could read it and see that that's what they were thinking. But then as they start to get to know me and I start, providing them with the Excel sheets and the way that this could be organized and stuff, there was a level of respect that then came. And I think, one of the things is that I never took it as demeaning. And I never took it as, this was condescending or anything like that. I just sort of took it as this is just the way it is. And I can either let it be an obstacle or I can just go right through it and, win these people over and show them that I know what I'm doing and that I can do this job and I can do it better than most people, and I think that because that's the attitude I took, I have countless amounts of friends that run stadiums and arenas all over the country, even though I haven't been in that business now for a good, probably 10, 12 years. So, and it's wonderful for me. I get to go to all kinds of shows and just say, hey, I'm going to be in your state and this show's playing. Can I get a couple tickets? And, they're all like, oh my God, of course, Rosie, so it's been very nice.
Oh, that's amazing. And you kind of did not let that challenge limit you. I think you were bold, just like your mom, and you're a go-getter, and you just had to
I
show
can
them.
tell you, I don't even know that I even saw it as a challenge in retrospect. I could sit here today on this podcast and say that was a challenge back then. Back then, I just, was fully focused on I'm going to excel in my career. I want the next step. I want to learn the next thing. And I want to be as good as whoever that top person in the room was.
And it
At
didn't
the
matter whether they were men or women.
me personally, I could care less. But I think
Yeah.
because I had that kind of openness to it, it allowed me to kind of just, get right into it and just do the job and not get into all the superficial dynamics, that
Yes.
exist in politics and the world of work and that type of thing.
All that noise, you just kind of tuned
Right.
it out and just
Exactly.
went for it.
Did the
Fantastic.
job. I just did the job.
Fantastic. Now, let's talk a little bit about influence. So, was there an outcome of some work that you did that you're proud of? And can you talk a little bit about how you influenced that outcome?
I would say that probably my most proud moment with regards to work would be Hurricane Katrina. So I was building the football stadium in Houston, and I had just left and taken a new job with another facility in Florida. And I got called back to Houston when Hurricane Katrina came, specifically because I knew the building, I knew the layout, and I knew what each room could do from a planning side. And there wasn't really another person at that moment in time that had that skill set about that particular project. And so when all of the victims came from New Orleans to Houston, everyone in Houston was kind of like, oh my gosh, what do we do? Well, they all end up at the convention center, but how are we going to do this? So I ended up flying in within a couple hours of all of this starting to happen, was there for 28 days. We set up everything from schools to nurseries, feeding, showering. I mean, you name it. It's literally how to get your social security card, because they all came without identification and without any kind of information, because they just ran, and got on buses that were leaving the city that was flooding, So I think being able to contribute to that and understanding the inner workings of emergency management, that ultimately led me to do probably another 15 or so hurricanes that were more on a mass level like that. Wow. And I helped write some laws that went into effect in Washington surrounding mega shelters and the policies behind mega shelters. I laugh now because for the most part, there probably will never be another mega shelter just because of COVID. But at the time, it was the cutting edge stuff that you were working on that you could use these stadiums and convention centers for. And it really was a great use when you take out pandemic, kind of side of things.
Yeah. Wow. And I can remember Katrina and listening to the news reports of how difficult it was. Right. It's more than difficult. Really, safety was an issue. And like you said, even the most simple applying for or getting a social security number. I mean, that's a challenge.
Yeah. I mean, it was, that not having the identification and having to create all the systems and get the right people in place to initiate those things. But it was also then, the philanthropic celebrities that also then wanted to all of a sudden be seen in these shelters and stuff. And that created, I mean, it was wonderful when they donated money and donated things, but when they were there, it created an entire another level of security and took a lot of personnel, that was helping with the emergency away to now deal with security details and things like that for these celebrities. So, I mean, we had presidents, we had all kinds of people that went through, basketball stars. I mean, you name Oprah Winfrey. I mean, it was just constant. And all of a sudden there was a certain point, like a week into it, that here came all the celebrities, and I remember that was very challenging, but, in a good way, because in the end, the mass majority of them donated some level of big funding that helped all these people. I mean, there was 28,000 people in that one shelter for a month, that didn't have anything. So, yeah.
And some little cities or communities don't even have that many people. So I wanted to say it's really sometimes so very interesting how people that you really would never hear about that make such an impact on outcomes. Like, for instance, you talked about the laws that you helped write. I mean, thank you for all that work that you did for the community. I think that's worth talking about. So thank you for that. So let me ask you, if you had one piece of advice for our listeners, what would that be?
Don't conform. Just don't conform. Be yourself, be true to what your knowledge base is. It's okay to say no. And it's also okay to say, I don't know. Let me think about it, or let me look into that a little bit and I'll get back to you. And I think a lot of people are so, we live in the age now, this time is very like, I need an answer right now. And it's like, your text message comes in and you feel like you have to respond immediately and acknowledge that you got the text message, but you really don't, and I think I've had the, luckily with my age, I mean, I've had it all the way from, we were working on computers, but people still sent mail. And then they started in email, and then they started responding to emails. And it's like, and now we're into text messages and emails and voicemails. And, there's 20,000 ways now to reach a person. And the average person cannot keep up with that much information and that's needing a response. And so I find that it's okay to not necessarily have an answer immediately and to be able to think through things so that you can continue to still be strategic in the way that you are responding. And it needs to be right for you, because a lot of times I see people just, quickly respond, but it's like, well, you just set yourself up for another 3 hours of work now because you just said yes, instead of just saying, I won't be able to get to that till, Wednesday, I'm whatever, type of thing. So I think, just, and not conforming, just don't be the standard and don't be what everyone expects, be yourself and be professional and learn, just realize that you don't know everything. I mean, I've have a wonderful career and experience in a certain field. I'm taking so much of that experience and now applying it into the retail component and real estate component, but that is not my industry of trade.
Right.
I just am a good deal maker. I understand how to vet partners. I understand business. I've run big businesses. So I can sit here and immediately, talk to someone and go, this person could align very well with Foxtail. How are we going to make this work? And then I work through that channel, not necessarily let's put them in the box. And if I can check off all these things, then they can do it. It's no, let's get to know this person and see what's going to work for them, what's going to work for us, and then try and make that all happen.
Wow, that's great, because it is true that people, when they're starting their careers, actually have a tendency to conform, right? Because they want to make sure that they're doing their job correctly. But it's those people like you and me who are bold enough to think outside the box and not conform that actually stand out. So that's a great piece of advice, Rosie. I appreciate that so much. So we've come to the part of the podcast where I hand over the mic to you, and you have a question for me.
Perfect. I do. Okay. What would you like to see happen in our education system to create a more dynamic retail and commercial space? One thing I've realized is, again, it goes back to the conforming side, but what can we offer the youth and the next generation of realtors and commercial brokers and, developers so that they excel?
Sure. And that's a really, really great question. As a matter of fact, when you think about our youth and how very limited I think the offerings are when it comes to commercial real estate and real estate in general, you can see how it's not easy for the youth to even think about or know about a career in, most especially, commercial real estate. Right. So I'll tell you a little story. Just about a couple of weeks ago, I'm very much involved in the CCIM organization, and locally here in Central Florida, we recently partnered with the Bethune-Cookman University in putting on a class, which is called Foundations of Commercial Real Estate, through the CCIM program. It's a 2-day course, and it's taught by, that particular class was taught by Blaine Strickland, who of course is a speaker. He's also very well known in the commercial real estate industry. And just about Friday of last week, I encountered some of the ladies that actually went to that foundation course, and they're from BCU, Bethune-Cookman University, only to find out that they don't have a real estate program there. And there are many universities and colleges that don't have a real estate program. And if your question is, what would I like to see more? I would like to see more of organizations actually partnering with the universities, the local universities, and try to maybe establish a real estate program, because there is a lot of wealth building that occurs with real estate. And the biggest wealth building tool is owning your own real estate, whether it be a house or commercial real estate. And also it has a lot to do with small businesses as they go into commercial space. I think there is a vacuum, so to speak, with regards to that. As a matter of fact, I was just in a Zoom call with ICSC, and they were talking about how antiquated, right, our industry is, because we're still very male dominated. We know we're having challenges with trying to get the youth to participate. And what a great question. I think it really just boils down to being able to advocate for more of that type of education, especially in universities and colleges, because that's really where the light bulb kind of turns on for our youth. So thank you for that question. Yeah. So did you have any thoughts as to what else we could do for education?
Well, I will tell you that a lot of business students and a lot of these other programs that are, let's call them the more well-known programs and stuff at these universities, have a lot of internship courses where they have an entire semester that they have to dedicate towards some type of professional industry. And I do think that if, real estate in, the industry of real estate, If all these different groups that are involved reach out to some of these schools, and even if it's on a one-on-one basis that you're taking an intern for a semester and you're teaching them the ropes and you're mentoring them and you're letting them, kind of walk through your shoes as you're doing business, there's nothing more valuable, for these, young people coming out of college than to actually work with a professional, not necessarily in just a push it, job, here's your computer and do this letter for me and that kind of stuff. But let me understand what it is that they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fantastic. And I'm hoping that
these,
more people,
university programs, I think that would be a huge help.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that there will be more advocates for education, because that's really what we need. People who hold the key, who can open the doors. So Rosie, I want to thank you so much for spending time with me. I think this was fantastic. I know, again, you're a very busy woman, and I'm so excited for the big expansion of Foxtail.
Thank
and
you.
I mean, what a fantastic model. I mean, it's really
too.
just, it's coming to the marketplace, and your brand is just completely different from the rest of the coffee shops that are.
It's craft coffee, and it's experiential, and that's what people want now. We're all able after this pandemic to go, what are the priorities in my life? And people want experiences now, and they don't mind high quality experiences, but they want a good quality experience if they're going to pay a little bit more for it. And not everything is about quick service. I find myself less and less wanting the quick service and preferring just someone give me good customer service, and when you find it, you return, and you become a patron. And I think that that's where we're really just hitting the mark on that one.
Yeah, you sure do. You sure do. Well, thank you, Rosie. And
thank you.
I hope to run into you in one of the conferences, or maybe we can even do a deal together.
Grab a cup of coffee.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. And you have a wonderful, wonderful week ahead of you.
Thank you. You too. Take care.
Take care.